we're back.
Great. Welcome back. Welcome back. It is good to be together and to feast together. We have feasted well this week. If you're in the hall lingering, I invite you to return while the chair of our Policy and Reference Committee, Rose Mbisa, please make your way to the microphone. We want to hear about the good work they've been chewing on over lunch. Thank you all for coming back a bit early and for abbreviating your lunch. Rose, thank you so much for your leadership of this committee and for working so hard through the afternoons and evenings and on weekends and over lunch today especially. So I want to say a word about how we'll proceed this afternoon. We will return to the two public statements that were at the very beginning of our session earlier today. And then, in a reminder, the public statements require a 2/3 majority. We may need to do a test vote as soon as everyone is in the assembly to ensure that we have a quorum. And then we'll proceed with the resolutions that we first heard before lunch, because they've done some work on those resolutions. And then we'll proceed through the resolutions that we have not yet talked about, but no doubt some of you have forwarded your comments to the committee before lunch, so they have actually seen your comments. But no matter what happens, my flight leaves at 5 in the morning, so I'm going to be gone. No matter what happens, we will conclude the work on the resolutions no later than 16:15, and that gives us a few minutes to hear some closing remarks from our president, to hear some comments of gratitude from our General Secretary, and to hear from the ever-present Arnie about some final announcements. So that's our plan for the afternoon. So Rose, I want to turn it over to you so that together we can return to the public statement on the war against Ukraine. And may I suggest you simply report on what the committee has decided, and then we'll see what the will of the House is.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. On public statement regarding war on Ukraine, what was received was to add a friendly amendment that will include children, and that committee considered it and feel that it is okay. The other comment was on the language. What the committee understood from the feedback received was to show the neutrality of LWF. And what we would like to report to the Assembly is that this resolution, which was proposed by the committee, is based on past LWF position on the same issue. And these past resolutions taken either by the Council, they were not neutral. LWF already had a position on that. So with that being said, we have left the public statement as it is.
Thank you, Rose. So the statement now comes before you as edited by the committee. Is anyone wishing to move to a microphone to speak to this?
Over here.
7. Well, oh, yes, hello. Microphone 7, please.
I did hand it in, Laumus Uzevics, and I will speak in English from the Latvian Evangelical Lutheran Church Worldwide. I handed it in written. I don't know whom received it, but we were asking in line 38, might the word terrified be replaced by the word appalled? Because terrified it seemed to mean that we were afraid of the destructive power. We are actually appalled by the destructive power the aggressor is destroying the area with, if that could be a consideration.
I would turn to the chair to see if you're all right with that slight word change.
Since it is coming from an English speaker national, we take that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else moving to a microphone? I don't see any, so if you would warm up your voting machines. And let's have the action before us to approve this public statement on the war against Ukraine. And a reminder, this requires 2/3. I'm going to ask our parliamentarian if we need to do a check to make sure we have a quorum.
Yeah, as I'm looking at the room, I think they're more than half here, so let's give it a go.
Okay, all right. So let's have the action before us. Vote now for or against or abstain. And voting will close now. Voting is now closed. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Well done. Well done. Thank you. Let us now turn to the final public statement on religious and ethnic minorities in Asia. Law Rose?
Thank you, Chair. The committee took into consideration what was proposed, and we did receive written proposals, which was about on changing to be more broader and inclusive, but also to include aspect on indigenous and other groups. I am not sure if the text is now ready, but yes. So it has been taken into consideration.
So you see the changes that were made there? Good. Anyone wishing to speak to this, move to a microphone? I don't see anyone. Yes, microphone 3, please.
Is the other part remain the same, or can we see the later part of the documents? Because in the 3 points, I'm sorry, I'm Lian Chao from the Chinese Lutheran Church Hong Kong, speaking English. I would like to see the rest part if there's any changes. Okay, thank you. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 6, please.
Tor B. Jørgensen from the Lutheran Church in Great Britain. I still think that the title of this, can you show me that? It is something, this is a very open public statement on religious and ethnic minorities in Asia. And then there is nothing about the more main question here. I referred member churches, you can say, In Pakistan, there is a Church of Pakistan which includes the Lutheran tradition and history, and they are really a minority, as also in other countries, which are really under pressure from their majority society. So I think this is something wrong here in the headline and the content of this. I tried to address it, and I think there was another one who also addressed the same item, and I can see no consequences of that here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If my understanding is also right, the comment and the country being mentioned is still in Asia. But if it is the intention to also include other regions, I think in the body of the text we have included. And it should also be remembered that these resolutions specifically came from either individuals or regions.
Yes, microphone 4, please.
Bettina Westfeld, Evangelical Lutheran Church of Saxony. Ich spreche Deutsch. Ich spreche als Mitglied des PRC, des Komitees, und möchte unser verehrte Madame Chair etwas unterstützen.
I would like to support Madam Chair, because in fact we have two things that were put into the same public statement. But if you read it carefully, the different points, we believe that we take into consideration of all the aspects that were mentioned, the oppression of our sisters and brothers in Asia in general, and also the question of the indigenous people. It's a bit difficult because we really try to unite the two things in one statement, but at some point we cannot produce another resolution. I think with these three small changes, which cannot be seen clearly, we did justice to these two concerns. Ask you on behalf of the committee to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? I don't see anyone. So we have the action before you to approve this statement as amended by the committee over lunch. Wake up your voting machines and please vote now. And voting is nearly, and now voting is closed. Thank you. Yes, thank you. It is adopted. We will now turn first to the resolutions that we saw before lunch. And the first one is the resolution on strengthening theological education. It's on page 9. So, Laura Rose, please.
Thank you, Chair. The committee also did work on that and took into consideration what was proposed and handed in writing. And we have a new text.
to make sure you can see the highlighted text. So just give us one moment. Yes, yes, thank you. Well, Rose, could you tell us what is the new text here?
Yeah, there was on call number 3, let me start by that one. There was call number 3, there was the issue of inclusion of web, but also to strengthen, to make it more visible, the role of the communion office. And so that is where we have made changes to enhance its networking role with member churches and the theological institutions. And we thought networking embraces what was being proposed as forming a web.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone speaking to these modifications? Yes, microphone 4.
Bettina Westfeld, Evangelical Lutheran Church of Saxony. Ich spreche Deutsch. Ich möchte noch für das Komitee anmerken, dass wir den Begriff der Misleading Theologies drin gelassen haben. Der war ja angefragt. Es ist hier ein direkter Link der Resolution zu der Abschlussmessage. Und die haben wir ja verabschiedet, da steht der Begriff drin. Und Resolution und Abschlussmessage sollten sich aufeinander beziehen, sollte eine gewisse Logik haben. Deswegen
logic
sind
in it.
diese Anregung, die
Therefore,
wir natürlich auch
the
diskutiert haben, nicht
idea that was presented was not accepted. Thank you.
Thank you. Others speaking to the resolution? I don't see. Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, Bishop Ortiz, please.
Layla Ortiz, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. I will speak in English. Also speaking to number 2, from the pre-assembly, from the women's pre-assembly message, we had stronger language rather than just to improve. And while I understand that brevity is preferred, I think clarity is essential. And so I'd like to read, and I do have it on paper, I'd like to read what was recommended from the women's pre-assembly. We call for the creation of transformative Lutheran theologies that address gender justice. We call for their inclusion into the core curriculum of theological studies of our universities and Bible colleges. We hope this to be an integral part of the education of ministers, Sunday school teachers, and others carrying faith formation responsibilities with our churches.
Okay, am I to hear that's a motion to amend?
Yes. Or to add.
Well, to add would be to amend.
Yes.
So is there a second? I do not.
I second this amendment.
Thank you, thank you. So we will now debate the amendment that was proposed. Bishop Ortiz, we need that in writing so that everyone can see it on the screen. Yes, please give it to Dennis Fredo. Thank you, Dennis, for our faithful scribing. Just give him a minute to put that in there. Any other speaking to this amendment first? There we go. And I don't know, Laura Rose, if the committee discussed this and you want to speak to that at all?
What committee discussed was that some of what was received will come in other proposed resolutions. We have, the way our resolution was structured, we try to group them in groups that can be easily understood. So that is why earlier on I said there will be a resolution on gender justice, there will be a resolution on gender-based violence, and that. So I'm not sure if the speaker has made reference or has been able to see that, and it's missing in all those.
So you can see the amendment, and in a moment we're going to vote just on number 4, the amendment that is being written up on the screen. In just a moment, we just vote on the amendment, and then we'll vote on the full actions 1 through 4. So Bishop Ortiz, is this correct? We call for the creation of transformative Lutheran theologies that address gender justice. We call for their inclusion into the core curriculum of theological studies at universities and Bible colleges. We hope this to be an integral part of theological education.
Of the education of ministers, Sunday school teachers,
Okay,
anyone being formed in.
great. Microphone 4.
Thank you, Ulrike Weyer, Evangelical Lutheran Church in Saxony. Ich spreche Deutsch. Ich möchte gern
speak
diesen
German.
Antrag unterstützen.
I
Das, was wir
want
jetzt hier
to
im
support
Entstehen sehen, dass wir diesen
this
Teil nicht
proposal,
hinzufügen. Es war
to
tatsächlich
add
auf der
this. In fact,
Frauenversammlung ein
at the
wichtiger
pre-assembly of
Punkt,
the women,
diese
it was an important
Transformationsprozesse
point to
in
mention
uns
these
befinden,
transformative
zu
processes
unterstützen,
in which we
sowohl
are
was
and to
Bildung als auch
support them,
Netzwerkarbeit angeht.
and
Ich bitte
also
darum,
for
dass
our
dem zugestimmt wird. Vielen
work
Dank.
and network work. Please agree with it.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
My name is Peter Lodberg. I'm from the Lutheran Church in Denmark. I just want to say that I would like to abstain when voting because we come from a situation where the churches are not in a position to tell universities what kind of curriculum they will have.
Thank you. Anyone else moving to a microphone 4, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Deonal Sinaga from Batak Protestant Church in Indonesia. In principle, I agree with the changes made by the committees. When in the first draft, there was some issues that explicitly in the text, for example, developing and implementing the theology for defable and other points. And I added the few in my comments for the theology of creation. With the addition of point number 4, I will agree with that with the addition to gender justice.
Let me just interrupt you for a moment.
Yeah.
Only delegates are able to address the assembly and others who have voice, not visitors.
Yes, I'm
I'm
delegate.
You're a delegate?
I'm delegate.
Oh, okay. Thank you. My apologies for interrupting. Our timer will give you a few more seconds. Thank you.
Yeah. In number 4, that address gender justice, ecology problems, and then the defable. These 3 things from my point of view have to be added in number 4.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Microphone 6, please.
Yes, I'm Jenna from the Lutheran Church in Liberia, a delegate.
One moment, Jeanette, your microphone is not working.
Yeah, I think it's okay now. My name is Jenna from the Lutheran Church in Liberia. It's just a suggestion to the 3.4 that was just read by my sister up there. According to Mama Rose, they have categorized all these resolutions into various categories. I will ask that if we can go through the others category, maybe her concern would be in one of those resolutions, maybe part of one of those resolutions. So can we go through the remaining resolutions and see whether her concern would be any of those resolutions instead of having a vote on this one? Thank you.
Yeah, I wish we could. Unfortunately, the rules of procedure for the assembly require us to take action on the amendment that is before the House. I don't see anyone moving to a microphone, so we will vote on just the amendment, which is number 4, as you see it printed before you. So get your voting machines out and you vote yes or no just on this amendment. So please vote now. And voting is now closed. A simple majority is all that's required. It is adopted. Now, that's just the amendment. Now we're going to vote on the whole thing, 1 through 4. So get your voting devices up again, and please vote now for the entire resolution. And voting is now closed. Here it is. It is adopted. Well done. You're doing great work, and thanks for your patience with this chair. Let's move now to the next resolution that you've seen on study processes in theology. Rose?
Thank you, Chair. The committee worked on what was proposed and received by delegates, and we have a new text.
Can we see the text?
The amended part are highlighted, are the ones shown in yellow highlights.
And Rose, those are the only two changes. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so this is now before you for discussion. I don't see anyone moving to a microphone. So let's have the action before us. Vote. Let's have the action. No, they have the. Let's vote. Voting is now open.
I have a point of order.
You cannot introduce.
I stood here already.
Once a vote is announced, there cannot be a point of order. So just one moment, and I'll come to you once voting is closed. Voting is now closed. Please, microphone 4.
Thank you very much. Wiebke Zimmermann, Evangelical Lutheran Church of Hanover. I'll speak in English. There is another bullet point that was changed and not marked yellow. I just wanted to pay attention on that, but I think now it's too late. It's the point, the identity and participation of men in the life of the church and society, with particular attention to power relations, gender relations, and masculinities. I just wanted to pay attention on that.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. Don't hesitate to just call out if you have a point of order. I'm very sorry I didn't see you at the microphone. So I'll work harder on this. So thank you. Thank you. And the resolution is adopted. So let's move to the next resolution. on inclusivity and participation.
Thank you, Chair.
Can we show the result once again? It was 95% in favor. Sorry, it went by very quickly. Thank you. Are we good? Okay, thank you. All it takes is a second to look away and it's missed. I do the same thing, so thank you. So please, Rose.
Yes.
The resolution on inclusivity, the action items, and we will read these because they haven't been read before.
It is recommended to the Assembly to adopt the following resolution. Now, 1, that the LWF Communion Office prepare a process of evaluating LWF events such as assemblies, council meetings, and other similar events with an emphasis on inclusion, full and active participation, and representation. Second, that the LWF Communion Office support member churches in the development of accessible liturgical resources such as music and prayers, as well as other resources. This inclusive approach should incorporate sign language interpreters, braille materials, assistive technologies where needed, and any other necessary approaches for full and active participation. Third, that the LWF Communion Office encourage member churches to foster a culture of understanding and acceptance for any who face mental health challenges, encouraging an environment of solidarity and support. Fourth, that the LWF at all levels recognizes the importance of youth involvement in decision-making processes, presentations, and planning committees to ensure that the voices and perspectives of young people are heard and valued. Fifth, that the LWF Council ensures that the men's pre-assembly continues in future and to explore ways and opportunities for men to gather and continue the conversations that have arisen in this assembly and from regional expressions.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? Yes, microphone 1.
Tim Götz from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Bavaria. I'll speak in English. I wonder if we can include a point on accessible language for lay leaders and sort of young people and people who don't come from a Christian background or family. So like in the sense of to have a more, not like a less clerical and more accessible language. Thank you.
Madam Chair, would that be considered within number 2 in terms of accessible accessible resources?
It is a friendly amendment to it. Okay. We will accept it.
Anything else? Thank you for that. Let's vote then on this with that slight editorial change. Voting is now open. And voting is now concluded. Thank you. Well done. 95.6%. Thank you. And let us move now to the resolution on intergenerational justice policy.
Thank you, Chair. The LWF Assembly adopt the following resolution. 1, that the LWF Council develops an intergenerational justice policy. Second, that the intergenerational justice policy includes a framework for advancing the leadership of young people alongside all generations. This includes examining the generational balance of the vice presidents, the executive committee, and the delegates to the General Assembly within the regions. Third, that the LWF Council convenes a task force to develop the policy and to follow the progress of this task force annually. Fourth, that the LWF Council ensures that the task force will honor the LWF gender quotas, be representatives of the regions, and be made up of at least 50% people under 30 at the time of convening. The task force may propose policy recommendations which consider contextual realities, meaningful participation for young people in faith communities, and consider the ways in which intergenerational justice is vital to people of faith. Fifth, that the LWF Council requests the task force to recommend a policy for adoption by the Council by 2026.
Thank you. Is there speaking to this resolution? We've talked a lot about this. So not seeing anyone moving to the microphone, we are ready to vote. Voting, as soon as it appears, is now open. You are voting much more quickly than before. Voting is now closed. And it is adopted. Well done. Thank you. And now the resolution on moving forward on gender justice in polarized times.
Thank you, Chair. The LWF Assembly resolves as following. 1, to call on the LWF Council to initiate a strategic process on the next steps in the concrete implementation and development of the Gender Justice Policy 2013 and the Emmaus Conversation regionally. Second, to call on the LWF Communion Office to gather good practices and concrete tools that exist within member churches of successful dialogue on potentially divisive issues and urge member churches to share their contextually relevant tools and practices. Third, to call on the LWF Communion Office to develop and strengthen platforms and strategies for sharing of such resources, practical tools, and strategies to enable capacity building and resource development within various contexts, and urge member churches to engage in such capacity building. Fourth, to call on the LWF Communion Office and the member churches and regions to prioritize funding, or at least to secure minimally the same percentage to advance and support gender justice and women's empowerment. Fifth, to call on the LWF Council to ensure that accountability framework now under development itself will be gender just, and to have a specific element to support gender justice. Six, to urge the LWF Communion Office to continue accompanying member churches in supporting women in the ordained ministry and women in leadership.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this? Microphone 3.
My name is Arnfríður Guðmundsdóttir, and I'm representing the Lutheran Church of Iceland, and I speak in English. I'm calling. Can I please see line number 382? We call for the separation of the gender justice policy and the Emmaus conversation. These are two LWF processes that we recommend are participated in independently. Thank you.
I'm not clear if you're asking for those to be separated in point 1 so that we have 1A and 1B. It's, my apologies, I'm just not clear on what you're asking of the Assembly.
Just to emphasize, there are two different policies, and they should be participated in independently.
Thanks for your patience as the chair is educated here. In terms of editing what is before us, is that what you're asking, that we separate out? We know those are two separate processes, the gender justice and the Emmaus conversation, but are you suggesting an edit in number 1, that we end it after gender justice policy and then take the Emmaus conversation as a separate point? Is that?
Yeah.
I'll turn to the chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think I will need to take this back to the committee.
There really isn't a way to take it back to the committee. So we've had a request, and I hear that as an edit or an amendment. If we take it as an amendment and we just break it out as a separate policy, we'll turn to the parliamentarian.
This isn't really a parliamentary thing, but I think the sense could be reached by adding the words after the Gender Justice Policy 2013 and also of the Emmaus conversation regionally to make sure that they're separate.
Yeah, that could be okay.
Okay, that's an easy change to make. Any other speaking to this? Great, let's vote on this. The voting, as soon as it appears, will now be open. And voting is now closed. And it is adopted. Thank you. Laura Rose, do you need a glass of water over there? There we go. There we go. As you lead us through the next one on the resolution of gender-based violence, please. Thank you.
The LWF Assembly resolves as follows. 1, to call on the LWF Communion Office to revisit the resolution on sex education and elimination on sexual and gender-based violence from Windhoek, 2017, which is being quoted to encourage member churches to focus on sex education and the elimination of sexual and gender-based violence, including domestic violence, rape, sexual coercion, and sexual harassment within our churches. This focus is to be ethically and theologically comprehensive in cooperation with civil society. This effort should include collecting the testimonies of those who have survived violence so that their story is told and the silence is broken. Second, to require that all LWF activities have safeguarding mechanism against sexual harassment and gender-based violence. Third, that the communion office support member churches in creating and utilizing a code of conduct and other relevant policies and training materials to end sexual harassment and gender-based violence in member churches.
Any speaking to this resolution? Microphone 5, please.
I'm Kari Mangrud Alsvåg. I'm from the Church of Norway.
Could you speak into the microphone just a little bit better? Thank you.
Is it here? Yeah. My name is Kari Mangrud Alsvåg. I'm from the Church of Norway. And I would like to make the Assembly more aware of that this gender-based violence also is happening on digital platforms. So on line 435, I suggest that we add to require that all WF activities have safeguarding mechanisms against sexual and gender-based violence, including on digital platforms, for example. But that we also include the digital arenas that are now being used a lot for gender-based and sexual violence.
Yes, thank you. Chair?
That is a friendly amendment, thank you.
Okay, others speaking to this? No? It was movement, not towards a microphone. Anyone else wishing to speak to this? I don't see anyone, so we are ready to vote. Voting is now open. And voting is now closed. There it is, 97%. Thank you. Well done. And now we move to the resolution on reaffirming the youth quota.
Thank you, Chair. The LWF Assembly resolves as follows. 1, to call upon the member churches to implement the youth quota so that youth are fully engaged through participation and voting in decision-making structures and processes. Second, to call upon the LWF Council and member churches to develop a transparent and accountable mechanism to ensure that the youth quota will be met with official delegates who have the right to vote. And what is meant, they are not for them to be stewards or advisors by all regions at future assemblies. Third, to call upon the member churches to continue preparing youth in their leadership. Youth networks should be strengthened through activities that empower their members for mutual cooperation in local and global contexts. In so doing, we encourage the member churches to nominate youth delegates who are familiar with the church's work.
Thank you. Anyone speaking to this resolution? Yes, microphone 3.
Leon Chow, the Chinese Venice Church, Hong Kong Synod, speaking English. I'm looking at number 1, to call upon the member churches to implement the youth quota. I am not sure that in each member church situation, because it may involve a big amendment on their constitution and rules of order, and I'm afraid it will not be easily implemented even if we pass that resolution. Thank you.
Other comments? Don't see anyone moving to the microphone. So we are ready to vote. Voting is now open. And voting is now closed. Thank you. Let's see the results. Yes, well done. And now the resolution on reaffirming the lay quota.
Thank you, Chair. The LWF Assembly resolves as follows: to urge the LWF Council to implement a lay quota of 40% in all bodies of the LWF as stated in the resolutions, to call upon LWF Council, regions and the member churches to develop a transparent and accountable mechanism to ensure that the lay quota will be met at future assemblies.
Thank you. Any speaking to this resolution? I don't see anyone moving toward a microphone, so let us vote. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. Let's see the results. Very good. Thank you. Well done. Now the resolution on the rights of persons with disabilities, please.
Thank you, Chair. It is recommended that the Assembly adopt the following resolution. 1, the LWF Communion Office to ensure accessibility in all its events and of services it provides. Second, the LWF Communion Office develop strategies to improve and mainstream disability inclusion in LWF policy, in LWF advocacy work, and within LWF's programs and all activities, including assemblies. Third, the LWF Communion Office to acquire and analyze disaggregated data on the participation of persons with disabilities in the life of the member churches. Fourth, the LWF to work together in consultations with organizations of persons with disabilities to access relevant expertise. Fifth, the LWF Communion Office to advocate actively for the implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
Thank you. Is there any speaking to this resolution? I don't see any.
I'm here.
Microphone 7. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Please, microphone 7.
Okay, my name is Anani Andondoli from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania, and I will speak in English. In this resolution, it seems all resolutions is directed only to LWF, but there is no commitment of member churches. The issue of inclusivity for people with disability, it should be also rooted from ground level, that's from the member churches, not only to the LWF. So I just want to appeal to the committee to add at least the participation or involvement of member churches, not only for the LWF communion. Thank you.
Thank you. Others speaking to this? Microphone 1, please. Could you step a little? Yes, thank you, thank you.
Better? Helga Fiek, Evangelical Church in Central Germany, speaking in English. As someone involved with the organizing of a parish, I'm a little bit concerned how the number 3 will be implemented, because it means that we, on the very ground level, are asked, supposed, or forced to collect the data to process them. And I think we have a lot of red tape already in the church that I'm a bit reluctant to say yes to that. Thank you.
Yes, microphone. The microphone you're at.
Number 2. In Estonia Evangelical Lutheran Church, I will speak in English. I would like to change the word disabilities for special needs. Thank you.
We had a request, Madam Chair.
That is a friendly request. We can take it. Thank you.
And microphone, Bishop Kaiser.
Thank you, Chair. I would not do that change with the editorial committee. We checked the terminology from a person who specialized in, in that particular issue, and she suggested we to use the word people, persons with disabilities.
My suggestion is we've had a recommendation from the committee that consulted with a specialist to leave the text as it is. That is, persons with disabilities in the life of the member churches.
We're just informed that the name of the UN convention is the Convention on Persons with Disabilities. So this is the internationally accepted term.
All right. Any others speaking to this? Michael, are you going to the microphone? Microphone 3, Michael Martin, Oberkirchenrat. Okay, all right, we will vote then on the text that is before you. Voting is now open. And voting is now closed. Let's see the results. It is adopted. Thank you. Let us move to the resolution on indigenous peoples.
Thank you, Chair. The LWF Assembly resolves as follows. 1, the LWF Assembly reaffirms the resolution from Winnipeg 2003. Second, that the LWF Communion Office ensures that work on Indigenous people is included in the new strategy for Indigenous work. Third, that the LWF Communion Office collaborate and share learnings with the WCC Central Office conducting this work. Fourth, that the Communion Office support member churches to commit to investigating their own truth and reconciliation processes together with indigenous populations within their own context, and to support indigenous people to acquire contacts across national borders that separate the indigenous population from each other and others. Fifth, that the LWF offer a dedicated space in conjunction with the assemblies for the delegates for indigenous people in the form of pre-assembly.
Thank you. Any speaking to this resolution? Microphone 3.
Leon Chao, the Chinese French Church, Hong Kong Synod, speaking English. For number 1, although in the preamble it described the resolution of Winnipeg 2003, but it is not in the resolution itself. So I would like to include those back in the resolution number 1. Just the paragraph before the resolution. The whole paragraph, really the whole paragraph is put there. Otherwise, when someone just read the resolution, will not understand what is going on.
Yes, I hear that just as an editorial to actually put the resolution itself in number 1. Is that, Madam Chair, is that?
That has been taken, thank you.
I think we are ready to vote. Voting is now open. And voting is now closed. Thank you. Let's see the results. Well done. And now the resolution on Jewish-Christian relations.
Thank you, Chair. The LWF Assembly resolves as follows. 1, to call upon member churches and theological institutions to develop further theological reflection on Jewish-Christian relations from a Lutheran perspective in a global context. Second, to encourage member churches to explore the possibility of beginning or furthering dialogues with Jewish partners both at the academic and grassroots level to foster a deeper understanding of each other's communities. Third, to call upon LWF Communion Office to further engagement and collaboration with Jewish partners such as the International Jewish Committee on interreligious consultation on topics of mutual interest by the next assembly.
Thank you, Laura Rose. Any speaking to this resolution? Microphone number 1.
Bishop Friedrich Kramer from Germany. I speak Deutsch, German.
Deutschland, German.
Ich möchte gerne im dritten Punkt,
For point 3, I'd like to also call upon the Communion Office to start a dialogue process. I don't want to just talk about topics of mutual interest, but rather to really have a dialogue process. So a similar wording as in number 2, beginning or furthering dialogues, instead of...
Okay, so just the inclusion of adding the word dialogue. Okay. Others speaking to this resolution? Okay, we are ready to vote. Voting is now open. And voting is now closed. Let's see the results. Well done. Now let us look at the resolution on affirming humanitarian response on behalf of those affected by disasters in Libya, Morocco, and other humanitarian crises.
Thank you, Chair. The LWF Assembly calls on member churches to continue praying and standing in solidarity with the many people and communities around the world that are affected by humanitarian disasters. Second, on the LWF World Service to continue with ecumenical and interfaith partners its humanitarian assistance, livelihoods, and advocacy on behalf of the member churches in order to support people and communities affected by disasters.
This resolution is before you. Is there any discussion? I don't see anyone but a steward going towards a microphone. They are working really hard. Thank you to our stewards. Looks like we are ready to vote. Voting is open. And voting is now closed. Let's see the results. Wow. And now the resolution on climate emergency.
Thank you, Chair. The LWF Assembly resolves, 1, to continue with its efforts to encourage, support, and accompany member churches and other people affected by climate change through appropriate programs and sharing of best practices, resources, and knowledge. Second, that the LWF Communion Office strengthen its advocacy for climate justice at all levels, including by encouraging LWF member churches to incorporate climate justice campaigns into their activities. Third, to support as appropriate the protection of the rights and dignity of environmental defenders and people displaced by climate change impacts, including by the provision of the necessary humanitarian and livelihoods assistance. Fourth, to call on the Communion Office to intensify the LWS efforts towards reducing emission and pollution by putting in place a viable plan of action with the aim of become carbon neutral by 2050. Fifth, to encourage all member churches to reduce their emission to contribute to the action plan mentioned above within their context. Sixth, to encourage member churches to emphasize the importance of eco-theology as a framework for integrating spiritual and ethical values into environmental stewardship, articulating our theological basis for the care of creation, sharing technical knowledge, and advocating for climate justice.
Thank you, Laurose. Microphone 4, please.
Thank you very much. Wiebke Talia-Zimmermann from Evangelical Lutheran Church of Hanover. I will speak in English. I want to refer to point 4, the carbon neutrality by 2050. We already had it in a resolution of the Assembly from 2017, the 2050, and I think it's way too late. According to the message of the European Pre-Assembly in Oxford, I would propose to change it to 2030. Thank you.
Okay. Is that an amendment that you are making?
Yes, I do.
It requires a second. Can someone... there?
Ben Lukenchuk, Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada, seconding the motion.
Thank you, Ben. We have many seconds. Very good. Okay. So, The request is to edit this from 2050 to 2030. Is there discussion on the amendment? That's just what we're talking about. The change from 2050 to 2030. Microphone 6.
Thank you. My name is Martin Modeus, Church of Sweden. I speak in English. And as the former speaker said, we appreciate that a climate emergency resolution is suggested and endorse the majority of the actions. However, it's far too weak when it comes to mirror the state of climate emergency the world is facing today. We hear the cries of despair from all contexts, but not least from people in vulnerable situations and youth. We can't fail them and the creation. We are called to be signs of hope in this world, and our hope has to be put in practice now. We need to take urgent, drastic actions to avoid disasters. And we can't talk about climate emergency and then set targets as far away as the 2050. Therefore, we have the following suggestions. And it is firstly an action bullet number 4. We suggest
we're debating the amendment now, and we'll come back to other changes you wish to make. But right now we're just dealing with the amendment of changing 2050 to 2030. Is that?
I am in the same bullet point, but with a slightly different text. But I can step back if you want to.
Why don't you tell us what you're thinking, and then we'll figure out if this is the right spot for it.
Yeah, that's my point. We suggest the following writing: to call on the Communion Office to intensify the WF's efforts towards reducing emissions by putting in place a Paris Agreement-aligned viable plan of action with the aim to become carbon neutral by 2040. But of course, if you prefer 2030, I won't protest.
That was the original motion that was seconded, so we'll leave it as 2030 because that's what was moved and seconded. Any other speaking to the amendment? Microphone 7, please.
Okay. My name is Anani Andondole from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania. I have 2 suggestions to add. First, I would like to suggest the LWF to create a climate justice policy.
Yeah, let me, that's out of order. We're just working, and I'll come back to you in a minute. But right now, we're just working on the amendment that is before us, which is the changes that you see in red on point 4, but I'll come back to you, okay? Others speaking to the amendment, microphone 1.
Tim Götz, hello. Oh, yeah. Tim Götz from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Bavaria. I'm wondering, as much as I support the motion from my colleague, I would like to address some of the staff, if there have been already thoughts on how the LWF could be climate neutral, because the next assembly will be in 2030, and I'm not sure if it's possible to make the next assembly climate neutral, so I would like to have information on that. Is that possible?
I think it's difficult to ask for data in a resolution such as this. If this is adopted, it will go to the council, and they'll need to figure that out.
All right.
Others speaking to the amendment that you see? Okay, let's vote on the amendment first, and then I'm going to come back to speaker number 7. So first, the amendment that you see before you, moving 2050 to 2030. The vote on the amendment is now open. Please vote. And voting is now closed. Let's see the results. It is adopted. Thank you. Now, that's just the amendment. That's just the amendment. Now we're going to go back to the whole motion. So let's have the action before us. And I'm going to call upon my friend at microphone 7, please. Microphone 7.
Okay, thank you. I'm Wanani Andondole from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania. I would like to ask to add another point on resolution to create LWF climate justice policy, which will also be used to our members' churches in the underground level. And also LWF to develop materials which explains the relationship between human rights and climate change. Thank you.
We've had a motion to amend to include the addition of a point 7 that a climate justice policy be developed. And also information about the relationship between climate and human rights. Is that the wording at microphone 7? Is that the wording that you see now? To develop a climate justice policy and the relationship between climate and human rights?
Yes, actually we are very far, so I don't see it clearly, but if the issue of LWF climate justice policy is included in the writing and development of material and relationship between human rights and climate change, if it is reflected, then I'm okay. Thank you.
And materials on the relationship, okay? And materials on the relationship. So is there a second to that? This is still an amendment. Is there a second to this amendment?
Marcus Trahlborg, the Danish Church, second.
Thank you. So now we're discussing just point 7. This is another amendment. Is there further discussion on point 7? Microphone 6, please. Different? Okay. Microphone 4.
Yes, I do. Wiebke Zimmermann, Evangelical Lutheran Church of Hanover. I'll speak in English. I think my colleagues had to use the word climate change in this sentence. So then it's between climate change and human rights. Is it right?
Well, we actually moved and seconded the language that's before us. So let's deal with this first, and then if it's not right, then we'll come back and do something else, okay? It's microphone 6, please. I've called on her. No? No? So we're ready to vote on amendment, which is point 7. It's only point 7. We will eventually vote on the whole resolution, but this is just point 7. Voting is open. Please vote now. And voting is now closed. Let's see the results. The amendment is adopted. Now we're going to vote on everything, 1 through 7, all the action items. And now I'll go to microphone 6, please.
My name is Sofia Oreland. I come from Church of Sweden and I will speak in English. I have a point of order. The Archbishop from our delegation also had an amendment on bullet number 4 that we would like to vote for Can we please read it again? We would like to add Paris Agreement alignment after, before a viable plan of action. Paris Agreement aligned.
Paris Agreement aligned. Aligned with a viable plan?
Now it's...
yes. Paris Agreement aligned viable plan. Delete A.
Yes.
Yes.
And then I also have another question. We would like to strengthen the wording in the introduction because it's very weak from our point of view. Is it possible to also add something in the introduction text?
I ruled in the beginning that we would not make changes or adjustments to the preamble because the only thing that the resolution is acting on is the action.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you. So now we have before us an amendment to number 4. Is there a second? Or is that friendly, Madam Laura Rose? Are you okay with just simply adding the Paris Agreement line? Okay.
Yeah.
And then microphone 6.
That was just to second it, but if it's not necessary, then it's okay.
Microphone 1.
Igor Ahmed of Estonian Evangelical Lutheran Church. I would speak in English. I would like to suggest a friendly amendment to point 7 to put on the relationship between climate and other climate change.
Change in human rights.
Or maybe even, one second, emergency.
Emergency and human rights. If the one who moved and the one who seconded are all right with that, we'll just make the change. Okay? All right, it looks like we're ready to vote on this. On the whole amendment now, everything from 1 to 7. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. Let's see the results. Wow, good, 94, okay. Now let us move to the resolution on serving with people on the move.
Thank you, Chair. That the LWF Assembly adopt the following resolution. 1, to call upon member churches to unite and reaffirm their commitment in advocacy and action to save people on the move due to climate crisis, conflicts, and wars. Second, to encourage member churches to show solidarity and act together strongly and work with like-minded networks to influence public opinion and all governments on issues of migration, refugees, and internally displaced persons.
Thank you, Laura Rose. This action is now before you. Is there any speaking? Microphone 6, please.
Veronica Paulson, Church of Sweden. I will speak in English. People on the move can lose many things, but never their human rights. We support the resolution. However, we would like to suggest an amendment under Action Point 1. To call upon member churches to unite and reaffirm their commitment and advocacy and action to serve people on the move due to climate crisis, conflicts and wars, and violations of human rights. Motivation. This in order to not create categories of people of priority to us to act on behalf of. People migrate for more reasons than those stated. Moreover, we suggestion an addition under Action Point 2. To encourage member churches to show solidarity and act together strongly and work with like-minded networks to influence public opinion and all governments on issues of migration, refugees, internally displaced persons, and to stand up for the human rights of all members in society. Motivations. These to encourage an action on what advocacy on migration we mean. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We'll take both of those together as an amendment. And do I hear a second? Or friendly? It depends on the mood of the chair of policy and reference.
We take them as they strengthen the call, yes.
Great, great. We can just add that. Is there any further speaking to the resolution? Then the voting is now open on the resolution. Please vote now. And voting is now closed. Let's see the results. Excellent. Now the resolution on the church in the public space.
Thank you, Chair. The LWF Assembly resolves, first, to affirm the crucial role of member churches in their public voice in their context, recognizing that some of them are faced with risks and restrictions. Second, that the Communion Office strengthen its efforts and program to support member churches in theological reflection and in their advocacy at the local and the national levels, particularly through capacity building and provision of relevant advocacy tools. Third, that the Communion Office continue to amplify the advocacy work of member churches at regional and global levels, including through supporting the engagement of member churches within the United Nations and regional intergovernmental bodies. Fourth, that the Communion Office continues enhancing theological underpinning for LWF advocacy to ensure that thematic work, including those related to the Sustainable Development Goals.
This action is now before you for discussion. Microphone 4. Or not? Great. It looks like we're ready to vote on this. I am so sorry. Microphone 7, please.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Actually, we are very far to where you are. Okay, my name is Anani Andondole from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Tanzania, and I will speak in English. In order to have a public voice, we need to invest in advocacy. So we have seen the voice of young people yesterday on climate issues. I want to add one point for LWF to invest and enhance capacity building on advocacy to young people. Thank you.
Lo Rose, would you see that as a new point 5? To simply add, could you repeat it one more time?
Yeah, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, so it should be 5. That LWF to invest and enhance capacity building on advocacy to young people.
Advocacy to young people, of young people. Okay? Enhance advocacy with young people. Enhance advocacy of young people. Advocacy capacity of young people, is that what you want?
LWF to invest and enhance capacity building on advocacy to young people.
Yep. Yep. There we have it. That the LWF invest and enhance advocacy capacity of young people. Great, thank you. Is there a second? Is there a second Yes. And the winner is...
Charlotte Frank von der Evangelischen Kirche in Mitteldeutschland. I second the motion.
Thank you, thank you. Good. This amendment is before you. This amendment is before you. No one is moving to the microphone. Can we vote on just number 5, just the amendment, and then we'll vote on everything. So please vote. And voting on the amendment is now closed. So now we have the, well, let's see what the results are. There we are, okay, 93. The amendment is adopted. Now let's vote on the whole resolution. So let's have that before us once again. 1 through 5. I don't see anyone moving to a microphone. Can we get the full action before us? 1 through 5, as amended. 1 through 5, as amended, resolution on church in the public space.
So we need a new action item.
Yep, there we go, okay. So now voting is open on the entire resolution, 1 through 5. Please vote now. And voting is now closed. Let's see the results. It is adopted. We are almost there. Let's turn to the resolution on strengthening ecumenical commitment and ecumenical commemoration of the 500th anniversary of the Augsburg Confession. Laura Rose?
Thank you, Chair. It is recommended that the Assembly adopt the following resolution. 1, that the LWF Communion Office prepares commemoration of 500th anniversary of the Augsburg Confession in conversation with ecumenical partners. 2, that the LWF Communion Office utilize the occasion of the 500th anniversary of the Augsburg Confession to engage with the Augsburg Confession in ongoing ecumenical dialogues. 3rd, that the LWF Communion Office engage in strengthening the reception process of ecumenical study documents in accordance with the LWF Council Decision 2023, including facilitating a global network of ecumenical experts.
Thank you. This action is now before you. Anyone wanting to speak to this, particularly at microphone 7? I don't see anyone moving to a microphone. Microphone 3, yes, please. Microphone 3.
Maria Stettner, Evangelisch-Lutherische Kirche in Bayern. Ich spreche Deutsch.
Speak German.
Ich schlage vor,
I'd like to suggest to add in point 1 that we should consider, it should be considered if the assembly or a council meeting or another major activity in 2030 can take place in Augsburg.
I think, could the chair just receive that as an addition?
Since it is going to increase the visibility of LWF, I think...
The tricky part here is the assembly can't mandate that someone else host us. We could simply refer this action to the council, if that's acceptable to the mover. Okay, if that's all right, this action then, 1 through 3, is before you. I don't see anyone at a microphone, so let's vote. Voting is now open. And voting is now closed. Let's see the results. There we go. We have one more resolution that is the expression of gratitude. But before we do that, can we show a little gratitude to Lo Rose and all members of the Policy and Reference Committee?
Can they stand? Can they stand? Can they stand with your permission, Chair?
Please, please. What an incredible job you did, Lo Rose, and leading us through all of your work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, where's the resolution? Oh, yes. We have one final resolution, and there are so many people to thank for the kind of assembly that we have had. And so can we bring that up on the screen? And if it's all right, may I just read through it so that we name out loud? I should have asked how long it was before I said that. But let's, as I read through this, let's be mindful of all the exchanges and experiences, conversations, people that we have all enjoyed. So, the Policy and Reference Committee recommends adoption of the following. The 13th Assembly of the Lutheran World Federation, expression of gratitude. The 13th Assembly of the Lutheran World Federation, convened in Krakow, Poland, expresses its deepest gratitude to the following distinguished persons, organizations, and institutions for their indispensable contributions to the success of the Assembly and making it a fruitful, meaningful, and important event in the life of the LWF and all the participants. To this end, the Assembly adopts the following expressions of gratitude. To the Evangelical Church of the Augsburg Confession in Poland, for generously inviting the LWF 13th Assembly to Poland and the warm welcome and hospitality accorded to all participants. The Assembly acknowledges and greatly appreciates the tireless efforts and energy of the Evangelical Church of the Augsburg Confession in Poland and its presiding bishop, Jerzy Simek, have invested during the preparation and throughout the Assembly. To the municipality of Krakow and its mayor, Jacek Magorowski, and deputy mayor, Anna Korfel-Jasinska, and Stara Zajnidia, Krakow de Silva, as well as the Evangelical Church of the Augsburg Confession in Poland, for their generous welcome reception dinner for all Assembly participants. Thanks also goes to the Polish National Song and Dance Ensemble Śląsk for their cultural concert. Appreciation is also extended to Krakow Travel for the cultural and other tourism information they have provided. We also thank the municipality and the Congress Bureau of Krakow for the free transportation pass, the free taxi service, hotel for VIPs, and their provision of 2 days' worth of the costs for the use of the ICE Congress Center. 4, to the government of the Republic of Poland for their unwavering support and cooperation from the day it was announced that the LWF 13th Assembly would be held in Krakow until the end of the Assembly. To its Department of Foreign Affairs and the various Polish embassies for their invaluable support and assistance to the delegates acquiring visas to enter Poland. 5, to the Assembly Planning Committee and its chair, Presiding Bishop Dr. Tamás Fabini of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Hungary, including its advisors for their overall guidance, counsel, and time spent for various preparatory meetings in the lead up toward the assembly. 6. To the International Worship Planning Committee and its chair, Kinga Marjata Pap, Assembly Worship Coordinator, Mr. Tom Witt, and the Local Worship Committee and its chair, Piotr Schwetznutia, the music directors, liturgical leaders and their assistants, drama performance team, assembly choir, local choir from the different parishes, and others for carrying out spirit-filled worship services. To the local assembly planning committee led by its chairperson, Anna Wrzynska, for their capable leadership, devotion, and time they have given in guiding all the preparatory processes and actions in the lead toward and during the assembly. Moreover, the assembly offers special words of appreciation to the volunteers for their dedication to their multitask assignments, welcoming participants at the airport, help with transportation, showing directions, technical assistance, and on and on and on. Eagerness to help or simply share smiles with the assembly participants, making everyone feel welcomed and at home every day. Warm thanks. Warm thanks are extended to the local congregations who hosted participants in the youth pre-assembly and women's pre-assembly and the delegations of pre-assembly visits. Appreciation is extended to the ECACP's Augustana printing press for the printed materials, Jordan Boos for local transportation throughout the assembly, and Liberandum, provider of the medical services. To the member churches, national committees, and our generous host, ECACP in particular, for contributing to the assembly budget and others who have made in-kind contributions to the planning and running of the assembly. To the 26 local ECACP parishes and their pastors, who hosted the church Sunday services and visits to local communities, as well as the Evangelical Lutheran Church of the Augsburg Confession in the Slovak Republic and 2 Czech churches, the Silesian Evangelical Church of the Augsburg Confession and the Evangelical Church of Czech Brethren. The Assembly expresses profound appreciation for the many greetings extended to it by representatives of its ecumenical partners. We acknowledge the greetings provided by the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, conveyed through His Eminence, Metropolitan Professor Dr. Kyrillos of Krini, Patriarchal Exarch of Malta, the Roman Catholic Church through His Eminence Cardinal Kurt Koch, Prefect of the Dicastery for the Promotion of Christian Unity, the World Council of Churches through the Reverend Dr. Henrik Bedford Strom, Moderator, the Roman Catholic Church through His Eminence Cardinal Koch again, because once was not enough. And for the Mennonite World Conference through Cesar Garcia, the Reverend Cesar Garcia, General Secretary, World Methodist Council, through Bishop Ivan Abrahams, General Secretary, the Anglican Communion through Bishop Anthony Pogo, General Secretary, World Communion of Reformed Churches through the Reverend Dr. Hans Lessing, Acting General Secretary, Pentecostal World Fellowship through Dr. William Wilson, its Chair, Caritas Internationalis through Mr. Alistair Duto, Secretary General Global Christian Forum through the Reverend Dr. Kesli Isamu, Secretary ACT Alliance through Mr. Rudelmar Bueno de Faria, its General Secretary, Conference of European Churches through Dr. Jürgen Skovje Sorensen, its General Secretary, and the Community of Protestant Churches in Europe through Dr. Mario Fischer, General Secretary. This Assembly recognizes and rejoices in the presence of 2 former presidents of the LWF, Bishop Emeritus Mark Hansen and Bishop Emeritus Munib Yunan, and the two former General Secretaries, Reverend Dr. Ishmael Noko and the Reverend Dr. Martin Junge among us. To the many visitors who joined us from places near and far at their own personal expense in order to share in the life of this assembly. To the LWF 13th Assembly keynote speaker, Monsignor Professor Dr. Tomasz Halik, for his powerful and profound address that challenged the Assembly to live up to its theme of one body, one spirit, one hope. The same goes to respondents who interacted with Professor Halik, Ms. Catherine Laurie of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and presiding Bishop Dr. Frederick Onali Shu of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Tanzania, bringing the discussion to the realities and challenges of the LWF member churches. To the preachers at the opening and closing worship services, Reverend Danielle Duckman, Evangelical Lutheran Church in Suriname, and Reverend Dr. Anna Burkhardt, LWF General Secretary, respectively. Bible study presenters, Reverend Dr. Ho-Yin Kenneth Tsang, Professor Kalina Wachachowska, Reverend Dr. Barbara Rossing, and the Reverend Gerson Acker for their thoughtful reflections on the theological underpinnings of the Assembly themes and its sub-themes. To the Assembly thematic keynote speakers, the Reverend Dr. Benny Sinaga, the Reverend Dr. Brooke A. Aseli, and Archbishop Emerita Dr. Antti Jakalan, for their insightful deliberation on the sub-themes of one body, one spirit, and one hope, respectively. Similar appreciation extends to respondents and moderators of the respective thematic plenaries. One body, Bishop Naladzani Josephine Sikwari, Professor Dr. Baird Oberdorfer, moderator, Reverend Dr. Johannes Zeiler. One spirit, Bishop Izani Brook, Professor Dr. Veli Mati Karkinen, moderator, Colleen Cunningham. One hope, respondents Bishop Pavlo Schwartz, Katarina Kunert, moderator, Reverend Sally Azar, who enrich the discussions through their contextual experience. We extend to special guest Mr. Marian Trisky our sincere thanks for his inspiring testimony and words of wisdom, which he shared with us on Saturday, 16 September. To village group chairs, co-chairs, and reporters for displaying extraordinary facilitation skills that made the village groups indeed open, safe, and interactive spaces where the assembly themes and its sub-themes were further reflected upon and molded into concrete proposals for action by the LWF and its member churches. To all those who participated in the Yarmark exhibitions and the workshop presenters and facilitators for enriching the assembly through informal and sometimes entertaining exchange of ideas, traditional objects, clothes, and foods that truly reflect the global nature of the LWF communion. The 13th Assembly of the LWF records special gratitude to all those who contributed to the moving visit to the Memorial and Museum of Auschwitz-Birkenau, as well as its director, staff, and guides. The Assembly expresses its gratitude for the work of the LWF officers, the Council, and its various committees over the past 6 years. The Assembly took many actions that required the attention and action of the Council. The Council has faithfully carried out many of those resolutions and statements, the COVID-19 pandemic notwithstanding. The members of the Council and committees have faithfully executed their tasks, including providing helpful resources and assistance to the member churches. This Assembly conveys acknowledgments to its various committees and their chairs who devoted their time and energy to make this Assembly productive and help it to diligently discharge its responsibilities as per the LWF Constitution. These are the Business Committee and its chair, Archbishop Dr. Panti Philibus Musa, Policy and Reference Committee and its chair, Laura Rose Mbisa, Editorial Committee and its chair, Bishop Dr. Kaiser Marie Hinteka, Credentials and Elections Committee and its chair, the Reverend Dr. Robinson Butabutar, and Minutes Committee and its chair, Ms. Weibke Zimmerman. We also extend our thanks to the following committees: the Women's Pre-Assembly Global Planning Committee, the Local Women's Pre-Assembly Committee, the Youth Pre-Assembly Global Planning Committee, the Local Youth Pre-Assembly Committee, the Men's Pre-Assembly Global Planning Committee, the Local Men's Pre-Assembly Committee, the Auschwitz Task Force, the Code of Conduct Response Team, the Pastoral Care, and the Support Team. And I would also add to our translators, with whom none of this would have been possible. And I also want to add, none of those committees would have had people if it weren't for Bishop Larry Kokendorfer and the staff of the Dominations Committee. And also to the Reverend Dr. Anna Burkhardt, General Secretary of the LWF, for her wisdom and overall leadership and managerial capabilities she exhibited both in public and behind the scenes, to create an enabling and friendly environment for a smooth running of the Assembly. And we also thank the Assembly Coordinator, Ms. Marissa Camado, for her meticulous planning, implementation, and general oversight of the entire progression of the Assembly. To Magali Bauer and Jean Pearson, to Magali Bauer and Jean Pearson, Assembly Assistants, for their invaluable and tireless work of registering and arranging travel of participants, and to Reverend Klaus Reith as ICE Venue Coordinator. The same appreciation is extended to the local Assembly Coordinator, Ms. Malgorska Zakharaj and her colleagues, Adam Marek, Matus Wozniak, Konrad Indika, and Magdalena Marek, for their persistent commitment, including going the extra mile when circumstances required, as it happened many times. And we are grateful to the LWF European Regional Secretary, the Reverend Dr. Irenaeus Lucas, for all the facilitation and linkages with the region and host church. To the many teams and leaders for communications, space management, information safety and security, village groups, Yarmark registration, visitors programs, finance, IT, equipment, documentation, thematic plenaries, regional meetings, ushers, women, youth, and men pre-assemblies, as well as the entire LWF staff, co-opted staff, and many others from the member churches who have unselfishly given their time and efforts to this assembly. A special word of thanks goes to the designer of the Assembly logo, Ms. Kristen Opolinski, and World Council of Churches colleagues, Mark Henry Heiniger, Charlotte Bellot, and Daniel Sanchez for the technical and plenary support during the Assembly. Appreciation is extended to the Corps volunteers and stewards for their great service. Particular gratitude is expressed to the language service, the interpreters, the translators, the editor, and technical service for their continuous efforts to enable communication among the Assembly participants. I should have read it first before. Similar appreciation is also extended to the medical professionals who made themselves available for any help throughout the Assembly period and Delta Travels for the air travel arrangements of the participants. To all the Polish government branches, ministries, and agencies who contributed their part to make this assembly peaceful, joyful, colorful, and successful. To the representatives of the press, radio, and television who have covered and reported on the activities of this assembly, they and individuals who have utilized social media have assisted in communicating to the world the role of the Lutheran Federation, both in the affairs of churches and nations. To the management and staff of the ICE Congress Center, the main assembly venue, for their state-of-the-art facilities and professional services. Appreciation is extended to Masters Catering for their dining services. The same goes to the director and administration of Agiha, Hostel, Strump, Olymp, and Babylon, which provided comfortable accommodation and friendly environment for the participants, and Agia club studio for breakfast and other meals. We thank also the Krakow Parish Church under the leadership of Pastor Lukas Ostruska for the invaluable support to the Assembly office and side activities organized during the Assembly. And last but not least, the 13th Assembly of the LWF expresses its profound gratitude, love, and indebtedness to Archbishop Dr. Panti Philibus Musa, President of the Lutheran World Federation, for his pastoral and prophetic leadership of the communion. For the past 6 years, Archbishop Musa's leadership and witness during the past 6 years has affirmed our true global communion through his numerous visits of accompaniment to member churches in all the LWF regions and his care and concern for the member churches and the communion office during the COVID-19 pandemic. His competence, experience, and insight have guided the LWF as it has discussed and explored the practical implications of this global communion within our diversity. This assembly recognizes that there are many other persons and organizations who have been involved in the preparation, planning, and functioning of this assembly. Although unnamed, their contributions are not unnoticed, and our hearty thanks are extended to them. Beyond this expression, we thank God for the many blessings bestowed upon the 13th Assembly of the LWF, convened here in Krakow, Poland from 13 through 19 September 2023, and a deep word of gratitude to all of you who've taken time away from your parishes, from your institutions, from your agencies, from your families, from all the places where you embody what the LWF communion is. Thank you for coming here to be in this place at this time. Thank you. Can we approve this resolution by applause? And I turn it over to our General Secretary.
Good evening. Many words of thanks have already been said, and I can only join the gratitude, and also many thanks, Reverend Dr. Robin Steinke, for this incredible moderation and sharing during this session. First of all, let me also say a word of gratitude to you on my behalf, particularly to the Assembly delegates, advisors, and ex officio participants and our ecumenical guests. However, I would like to give a few signs, tangible signs of gratitude to some of those people who have been mentioned in the resolution that you just approved. And I would like to begin with our President, Archbishop Dr. Panti Philibus Musa, and express my deep gratitude for our cooperation during the past almost 2 years, and for your leadership in the global communion. It was amazing to see how you carried the communion through not so easy times, through the pandemic, and I myself could experience how difficult it sometimes also was with connecting in terms of, we are talking a lot about, switching to IT means and switching to Zoom meetings, but it was not always easy, yet our president never gave up. And I really appreciate your commitment, particularly given the context where you serve and live on a daily basis, which is not the easiest of all. And still, you took up the commitment for the global communion. So praise be to you for that, and praise be to God for having accompanied you on this way. And as we know, once LWF, always LWF. So I do believe that many of us will continue to encounter each other. So thank you. And I hope we have our host, our main host among us, Bishop Samets from our host church. So may I ask you, Bishop Samets, to come forward. Well, we all know that Bishop Samets and the whole church have been praying, or were praying, for the good weather for this assembly. And we did get a good weather. Today it's rainy, so there are two possibilities to interpret that. Either this is sadness about this body leaving this place now after tonight, or, as we just talked this morning, in Africa it means blessing. So, dear Bishop Samets, dziękuję. Dziękuję not only to you, but to the whole host church in Poland. We often talked during this assembly, and you frequently said that it's not just about nice words, but we should also address the real needs of people around us. And the gift that I would like to hand over to you is perhaps not the most beautiful one at the first glance, but one which is very deeply symbolical. And it is the so-called Liberian cross, which is made from an artillery shell. And a Liberian child soldier had a dream how from a child of war can become a child of peace, according to Isaiah's vision 2:4. How to transform swords into plowshare and their spears into pruning hooks. So this is, I believe, a very nice reminder of how your church has been supporting people who are fleeing from a context where, unfortunately, such shells have become an everyday reality. And it has been said multiple times during this assembly, but cannot be repeated often enough, that when we talk about churches and their strength and how big they are, it's not about numbers, but it's about their witness. And you have really showed an incredible witness to us, both with what you do in terms of supporting people, but also what you do in terms of serving God, and that you still manage to host the assembly in the midst of your very busy schedules. This is just incredible, and we are very grateful for that. So many thanks for your hospitality.
Bardzo cieszymy się z tego, że przyjęliście nasze zaproszenie.
Our invitation.
We are really glad that you accepted our invitation.
Przepraszamy za wszystkie niedociągnięcia.
We apologize for all inconveniences, so it was not perfect.
Ale mam nadzieję, że doświadczyliście trochę naszego Kościoła, także Polski.
But we do hope you've experienced a little bit of our church and also Poland.
I że będziecie wracali myślami do tego czasu spędzonego tutaj w Krakowie.
And we will come back in thoughts to this time that you spent in Poland, in Krakow.
A jeżeli chodzi o pogodę, to teraz po południu już będzie ładna i jutro też.
And when it comes to weather, today in the afternoon, the weather will be nice, and tomorrow too.
Muszę też powiedzieć, że nasi wolontariusze, nasi współpracownicy stwierdzili, że w tej chwili już mają tyle doświadczenia, że chętnie zrobimy za rok drugie zgromadzenie.
And I also would like to say that our volunteers and people who supported us said that they are experienced enough and that we can organize another assembly next year.
So may I now call upon Anna Wrzeszynska, who is the chair of the Local Assembly Planning Committee. I believe all of us have learned to know Anna by now, and let us greet her with giving her a hand. Well, dear Anna, I think we can put it quite simply. You are one of those people without whom this assembly would not have been possible. So, very big thanks to you for that. And I know this smile very well, and this smile has really accompanied us through the preparations for the assembly and has carried us through also not so easy times when we were planning for some really very heavy and difficult logistical exercises. But you have done a marvelous job, and you have really welcomed people to this country, and I believe you have managed, together with the whole local planning committee, to make it an unforgettable experience for everyone. So, but in order to recognize the whole local assembly planning committee, could please the other members also stand up so that we can give you a hand. Marissa. So, do we have Marissa among us? So, dear Marissa, you really knew it all during the preparations, and this was incredible because Marissa was someone who held all the logistical details together, who held all the planning together. And I must say I was always amazed when I worked together with her and saw how detailed and yet still how well on a meta level she was during the whole planning process. And I would like to hand over a box of chocolate to you, and this is not really only for you, but for the whole LWF staff and co-opted staff who has been active, because you have all done a marvelous job. And I keep on repeating, it is such a pleasure and such an honor to work together with all of you. So, dear colleagues, if you would just stand up so that everyone can give you a hand. Just to make sure that everyone sees that Marissa, as the heart of the assembly, gets the chocolate heart. Yes. And finally, the pastor from the local congregation in Krakow, Lukasz Ostruszka. May I ask you to come to the stage as well? Because the local congregation has been welcoming many guests and has been organizing many programs to offer you a good welcome to Krakow in the evenings and also to show, let's say, a Lutheran presence in this city. Thank you so very much, and to you goes a special gift that many of you in this room know. This is the famous Lund Cross from 2016, being the expression of unity and being the expression of call to participate in the feast of God's kingdom. So thank you very much. There are many more to be thanked, but this is just what was now given here on the stage. So all the gratitude that was expressed in the resolution, I would just like to join this. And now from my side, with a clap. And invite our President, Archbishop Musa, to say his closing words. Arni. Sorry. Arni first. How could I forget? Yes.
Good afternoon. These are the final announcements, and because it's a special occasion, I have props for the first time. I will be quick. This is the way. First of all, there are almost 2,000 photos from the assembly in the photo library, and we have a slide, or we might have a slide. It's there, and if you see the arrow points to where you can find the photos. View them, share them, use them. This is a good way to share the assembly. The LWF does not have a little blue book, but we have a big blue book, and this is it. And this is the 75th anniversary book of the LWF. Now, we wanted to give one book to every member church. So during lunchtime, books were actually placed on the tables where the church leaders sit. Just in case you did not receive a book, go to the registration desk. They have a book for you, okay? This is church leaders only, sorry. If you are on the outgoing council, you will also receive a book. This is after the closing worship, and if you are not a church leader and are not on the outgoing council but still want a book, send us an email. We will see what we can do with you. It's a great book. Now, you have just seen gifts being presented, and I want to tell you a little bit about these gifts here because they are special and they very well express what the LWF is and what it does. These are cups and plates and some communion sets, and they are made in Teze, and they are glazed with sand from refugees where LWF World Service is working. So they express how to be Lutheran is to be ecumenical, but how to be Lutheran is also to support people in need. And we just wanted you to know the story behind it. Now, on to less messaging and more practical matters. Getting to the airport. Information about the buses that leave from AGH is outside at the bulletin boards and at bulletin boards at the AGH. If you're leaving from the ICE, you can also, as we said yesterday, take bus number A300. Your badge is valid through tomorrow. So we are all for public transport, which is also good for climate justice. There will be bookmarks with blessings as you leave the closing worship. They're in 4 languages. You can choose which of the LWF languages you want. Maybe you can choose one which is not the regular one for you. So, we have another slide now. Interpretation devices. Need I say more? Well, just in case, this would be the next slide, I think then. I was asked for a haiku to express this. And again, I am not a poet, but here goes. Devices, headphones rest, silent echoes of the past, new voices will test. Please make sure you give back all of the receivers and the headphones after this session before the closing worship. Thank you. Now, for the next slide, in the last announcement session, I mentioned the evaluation form. This is the QR code, and it's in your email. You have until the 30th of September to fill this out. It's going to be compiled into a report, and the report will be shared with the incoming council. Please fill it out. Or, as we would say, your opinion matters when you're dealing with customer service. Now, to wrap this up, I'll be quick. We read in Isaiah 52 how beautiful on the mountains are the feet of the messenger who announces peace, who brings good news, who announces salvation. And I think that's just a beautiful description of our shared call. From here we go as messengers of peace to preach the gospel and to serve the neighbor. It has been a joyful task to be your announcer. And it is my prayer that you will stay very strongly connected with the LWF as you leave home. And I have a request. When you go back, would all of you be the LWF's announcers, sharing the story of what we are doing and achieving together? That would be just great. This is the end of the announcements. President Musa, over to you.
Esteemed delegates and guests to the 13th Assembly of the Lutheran World Federation. It's now my honor to bring some few remarks and also bring the assembly to a closure. But as I have already shared with the African region, in a few minutes to come, I will be four formers as far as LWF is concerned. Former area secretary, former director of a department, former deputy general secretary, and former president. So this brings me to the culmination of 21 years of direct involvement and service and ministry in the Lutheran World Federation. So I want to begin this closing moment with a verse from the Psalms. For it is often through these timeless words that we find the voice of gratitude echoing in our hearts. Psalm 67, verse 3. May the peoples praise you, God. May all the peoples praise you. End of quote. As we gather here today for the closing of this assembly, the overwhelming feeling that fills my heart is one of deep gratitude. Gratitude for the manifold ways in which God's grace has been abundantly present and has done among us. First and foremost, we extend our heartfelt thanks to our gracious hosts who have not only generously opened their arms, but also their hearts to us. They have nurtured and empowered us during our time here, making us feel at home. In a faraway land, We are thankful to the Polish government for not only making it possible for delegates to obtain necessary travel documents, but also providing necessary support for a successful assembly. Our gratitude extends to the dedicated committees and groups that have labored tirelessly to shape this assembly into a beautiful expression of faith and fellowship. We appreciate the invaluable work of the staff at the Communion Office, led by our General Secretary, who meticulously organized the details of this gathering as we proceeded from the opening until now. Mention must also be made of stewards, worship leaders, musicians, readers, media and communication staff. To be sure, no one is left out. Please feel included in my expression of gratitude if I didn't mention you. A special word of appreciation goes to the outgoing council and its vice presidents who have carried out their responsibilities, sometimes through challenging conditions, but always with unwavering dedication, sacrifice, and wisdom. Thank you. Thank you for your confidence and mutual support standing together from Windhoek to Krakow. Thank you. We also express our thanks to the speakers and presenters who shared their insights and inspired us, and to our ecumenical guests who reminded us that we are part of a broader Christian family, confessing and witnessing Christ as our Lord and Savior around the world. We are thankful to delegates who served in various assembly committees for your valuable contributions. A special appreciation to former LWF presidents and general secretaries and your spouses for standing with us in prayers as we prepared for this assembly, and those able to join us in person. Thank you for the many gifts you bring to this assembly and for your support. Our deepest appreciation goes to the delegates of our member churches who undertook long and often arduous journeys to be here. Some had to take weeks in order to access visas to come here. We don't take it for granted. It's such a sacrifice. Some had to already spend days and weeks traveling in your countries or to other countries to obtain visas. But importantly, your openness to meeting fellow disciples of Christ in the Lutheran faith from around the world. Being open to learn from what God is doing in their midst and also offer your gifts. Your willingness to embrace the diversity of languages, customs, and perspectives, and your commitment to unity, even in the face of differences and what we consider controversial issues, is a testament to the essence of our gathering. In these days, we have continued the ancient tradition of the church offering each other the gifts of visitation and hospitality. Indeed, we have been bound together by the gracious thread of God's love. For all this, we offer praise and thanks to God. I will not attempt to provide a summary of our extensive discussions and outcomes of this assembly, as we have already seen through the various statements and resolutions. But rest assured, all this will be shared with our member churches in due course once it is thoughtfully processed and assembled. As we prepare to return to our home churches, let us go fortified with a sense of encouragement. I, for one, feel strengthened having worshipped alongside you, experiencing the profound breadth and beauty of our Lutheran communion of churches, and the indescribable sacrifices and hospitality of our host church in Poland, in the larger Eastern European regional expression. I will tell my church and my country of our encounters, our dialogues, shared prayers, and the profound moment that we are part of an extended family, held together by God's grace in one body, one spirit, one hope. I will share stories of the mighty works of the triune God beyond our Nigerian borders and of our gracious host church and others striving to be faithful bearers of the liberating message of God's grace. I will tell them about a global communion of Lutheran churches that does not exist for itself, but seeks to participate in God's mission, carrying forward the message of justice, peace, and reconciliation in our world. A communion that seeks to build bridges, foster dialogue, and serves its neighbors, embodying our calling to be one body, one spirit, and one hope in God's one world. I will speak of the beauty of equal participation by men and women and youth in our assembly and the vibrant presence of our young people and their contributions. I will challenge my church and co-workers to do more to live to this vision. The assembly is drawing close, dear friends, but our journey as a communion of churches continues. Building on the dreams of our forebears, it is a journey enriched by the insights and inspirations of these past days. We may part from one another physically, but we shall never sever our unity by the blood of Christ, who himself has reconciled us to God in one body through the cross and the bonds that unite us as Lutherans. We shall return to our different local contexts, some bereft of peace and many struggling with various issues that seem to refuse to go away. But we will not forget about global vision and our calling as Lutherans. One body, one spirit, one hope. And now let me step out of my text a little bit and make a passionate appeal. I believe we have come here, some with pain due to internal church struggles, but some also inter-church struggles and issues. In view of our theme, one body, one spirit, one hope, I appeal to us to return home with the spirit of seeking to extend a hand to each other where there is brokenness, to begin to talk to each other where we are not talking to each other, to seek reconciliation and healing wherever there is brokenness, trusting the leadership of the Holy Spirit. For in the words of the same psalm that opened this address, may God bless us still, so that all the ends of the earth will fear him. Psalm 67, verse 7. Thank you, dear sisters and brothers in Christ, for your trust and unwavering support over these years and throughout these days that we have gathered here. As I conclude my role as president of the LWF, there is no more fitting way to bid farewell than to reiterate the words with which we began. May the peoples praise you, O God. May all the peoples praise you. May God continue to bless our Lutheran communion, and may our praise and service resound throughout the world until we meet again in 2030 at the 500th anniversary of the Augsburg Confession. With these words, I bid you farewell. Dear friends, as well declare the LWF 13th Assembly closed in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. And now I invite you to go straight for the closing worship so that we end it there. I invite you to please move to for the closing worship. Thank you very much.